Hi sophomores, welcome to your file structure in CSS activity how-to. Here's what we are going to be learning today and what I'm going to walk you through. So we are going to go through how to unzip and zip a folder. And we're going to review this again just because for the whole web design unit, it is extremely important that you completely get this concept, because you're going to have to be zipping your folders and submitting them on Canvas, because I'm going to need to see every file in that folder in order to run your website and be able to grade it. So we need to be really good at this. We're going to talk about the file structure for a website, which is extremely important. You read about this a little bit on the SDS manuals, but we're going to go over it again. I'm going to show you an example of a very messy folder and how you can fix it in order to make sure that your website is going to run properly. We're going to talk about what is CSS, what it does, and how to code it. We're going to talk about how do you link your HTML pages to your CSS sheets, because just because you created a CSS code, it doesn't mean that it is going to automatically apply to your HTML pages. You still have to add in an extra line of code in order to link it all together. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And then we're going to be writing CSS code. So essentially, we're going to be doing this week's assignment. So if you follow along, you will get a better understanding and you will have your assignment done. So let's go through the first thing. So how do you unzip and zip a folder? So I'm going to go to Canvas and we're going to go to the week 12 module. And the only thing we're really going to be focusing on is this CSS activity prompt. So you have the presentation and then you have this folder right here that says kimswebsite.zip. I'm going to click on it, and once you click on it, it is going to take you to this page. You're going to click on it again, and as you can see, it downloaded. And you can see right here that it has that little like zipper, means that that folder is zip. Means that it is compressed. So you cannot really work on a zip folder. It is absolutely compressed. You can't really do anything. So the first step that we have to do is we need to move this folder. So say show in folder, because I want to see where it is. It's in the downloads. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to be moving this folder. So I have it right here. I'm going to move it into the desktop. And just because I did that doesn't mean that it changes anything. It is still a zipped folder. So I'm going to show you how to unzip it. So we're going to click on it. I'm going to say extract all. Then it's going to ask me, okay, where do you want it to go? This is very important. You can change locations of things. I prefer to work on my desktop just because that way it's very easy for me to find things and know where things are. So I'm going to say it's going to my desktop. And I'm going to say extract. So I'm going to go into my desktop and I'm going to find my folder. And all it's going to say is just Kim's website, which is right here. And you can see the difference between the two. This one has the zipper, meaning that it is zipped. This one does not, meaning that it's something that I can work with. Okay, so anytime that you're downloading a folder that is zipped, because I am giving you all of the files to work with, make sure that we unzip first. Okay. So now when I clicked on the unzip version, I can see all of my files, I can manipulate them, I can work with it. Okay, so as we were talking about zipping and unzipping folders, let's talk about what happens when you're completely done. So you worked on this unzip folder, you have everything is ready to be turned in. You cannot just drag the folder in because Canvas is not going to recognize that, and I'm not going to get all of your files in order to run this. So you're going to right click. Now, mine is going to look a little bit different from yours. Yours, you're going to see that there's going to be an option that's going to say add to. It's going to have the name of the folder and then .zip. So it may also say like add to name of folder and then .7zip. Make sure that we are clicking on the .zip. For mine, it looks a little bit different. So all I have to do is send to and then compress, and it gives me a zip folder again. Okay. Make sure that once you are done that you're not getting confused with your original folder. So if you look at these, this is my original folder that I downloaded that was zipped. This is my new folder that is done and re-zipped again. Make sure that you are submitting the right one. One easy way to avoid making mistakes on this could be, okay, once you have this folder and it's a new one that you're working with, you can right click and say rename and add like your initials at the end. So you know, okay, this is a new one, this is the one I'm working with, so that when it gets zipped, it is also going to have this naming structure and you're not going to get confused. Completely up to you. Do keep in mind though that I am getting many folders that are named Kim's website. It is in your best interest that I know which one is yours so that I can better grade your work. So I would say that for every project, there should be your initials somewhere in the folder name. So we just talked about how to zip and unzip. Let's look at what's next in our list. So we went through this. So now let's talk about file structure for a website. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my folder. So I see it right here. When you open up this folder, you're going to see that there's many different types of file types, and that is okay. You need to work with all of these file types in order to create a website. Some of the file types you will see will be .html, which means it's HTML code. You will see JPEGs or PNGs, which are pictures. You will see this new one, funky one. It says .ttf. That is font. So anytime that you see a .ttf, that means that it's a font file. You can go online on Google and find fonts that you want to incorporate into your website and then just download them. You will see that I have more JPEGs and everything. If I try to work like this, it is not going to work. Because anytime that you're trying to tell your HTML code, hey, I have this background that I need to use, you need to tell it a source. And it can't just be this general folder because it's not going to know which one to find and which one to run. So you have to be extremely organized, which means that you need to have different folders for different things, for different file types. So our HTML and CSS, they do not need to be in folders because the computer automatically knows to run those as HTML or CSS because you're declaring what they are in their file type. Now for pictures and fonts, it can't do that. So we're going to have to make folder. So I'm going to make a new folder. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to say new folder and we're going to name it images. And what I'm going to do is you can organize your files by type. So all I did was just click right here so that I can see all of my JPEGs together and my PNGs, and I can just start moving those into the images folder. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make sure I'm moving only my JPEGs or PNGs. So those are going into images. And I have one last one. The only other one that I have that's not in a folder is that .ttf. So I'm going to make a new folder and name it fonts. So I'm going to put it in there. So now you're organized. So this is the basic file structure that you need to follow when making your own website. You're going to have your big folder. Inside, you're going to have an images folder, a fonts folder, and then your HTML and CSS files can roam freely. So now that you have this, we are going to be working with the About Me, the Interview, the Looking Forward, and the My Leader. You will notice that I am going to skip over the index and splash.css. That is because those are going to come in at a later time. But your index is essentially the welcome page. So you can think of this as like in Instagram where you log in. For your website, you're not going to be logging in, but programs always look at running your index first. So this is a very common thing. You will always have an index page that is going to be the first one that is ran, and that is what's going to allow them to have access to your website. It's very easy code, you will see, but we're not going to touch it. We're only going to focus on those 4 main ones and the CSS that's going to accompany just that one website, because you will also see that the splash page has a different CSS code than what you will have for your entire website. So let's just talk briefly, what is CSS? So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Cascading because it applies to everything in your website. So wherever you link that CSS to with those HTML pages, it is going to apply it. This is extremely important when you're working with a lot of different HTML pages that you want it to all apply to and have that same look. So anytime you change something on your CSS code, as long as you have it linked to the HTML pages and as long as you save it, it is going to apply all of the changes across all of the different HTML pages. Style, because CSS works with the looks and the sign of your website. So where do you want your text to go? Where do you want your buttons to go? Where do you want your pictures to go? How do you want them to look? And sheets, because that is just the type of coding that you are writing. So that is what CSS does. It's truly just all about the looks of it. And it's extremely important because that's what makes your website unique and come together. So let's start with opening up those HTML pages. So I'm going to go into the About Me. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say Edit with Notepad++. You will see it's going to bring it up. I'm going to go back to my folder and I'm going to do the same with the interview. Edit with Notepad++. And my looking forward. Edit with Notepad++. And lastly, my leader. Edit with Notepad++. You will notice right off the bat that it opens them in each individual window. Extremely important, makes it easier to work. It also makes it so that you can test things out in one page and not have to do it in all right away. You will notice that this little floppy disk is looking blue right now. That is because I haven't changed anything, and if I would have, then I would have already saved it. It is important that anytime you're trying to run your code, that it looks this blue color. If it is red, that means that you made a change and didn't save it. So your code is not going to work. Code doesn't apply automatically until you hit save. So now let's talk about, okay, I have my 4 HTML pages. How do I really start linking them together? So I'm going to try this in the About Me page. So I'm going to go and look at my code and I'm going to look for head, which is right here. Then I'm going to see that there is a space. That is the space that I want. And that is where I am going to be coding. You have to copy this link into every single one of your pages for it to work and for it to connect to your CSS. But let's start. You will notice that all HTML code opens with the little caret, so that's what I'm going to do. You will also see that my floppy disk already turned red. That is because I made a change and I didn't save it just yet. So I'm going to start with that and I'm going to say link real. That is because I am linking it to something else. I'm going to get rid of the space just to make it easier for you to look at. You will see that anytime that you type in code with Notepad++, the cool thing is that it will start turning it colors. That's how you know it's working. So I need to tell it, okay, what am I going to be linking to? So I'm going to be linking to a style sheet. So that is the first part. I'm going to be linking it to a style sheet. You will notice that my code looks purple. That means because it's working. I have everything I need. There's quotations around my words. It is spelled correctly. Everything looks good. So now I need to tell it what type am I going to be using. So type. Well, I am working with a text/CSS. Because I'm going to be saving that page as a CSS. The last thing would be okay, now I need to actually tell you what is the name of the file. So href, that is what actually links it. And it is going to be style.css. We haven't made this page yet, but I know I'm going to name it style.css. And I'm going to put my little quotations around it because I forgot it. And as you can see, when I didn't have it, it changed colors. Now it's back to its original bluish purple, means it's working. And anything that opens needs to close. So I need that other caret. So I'm just going to look at it. I have an opening caret. I have my link reel to what I think it is, the type, and the href. Right now, if I run this, I'm going to save it. If I run it, nothing is going to happen because I haven't changed anything. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to try to open it. You're going to see nothing happened. This is just basic HTML. I have my banner. I have my buttons, all of which work. But there's nothing else to this. There's no background color. Everything is on the left side, just like you would read a book. But maybe I don't want this. Maybe I want it to look more unique. This is where all of this CSS is going to start to come into play. So now let's start coding that CSS. So how do you code CSS? How does it work? So I'm going to go to File, New. And right away, I am going to save it. I'm going to say Save As. I'm going to make sure that I am in the correct folder. I can see it's Kim's website NP. So that is my folder. And I'm going to name it. So style.css. Important that you use the exact same name you used in your link so that it works. I know that it has to be .css because I want it to be focusing on the style of it. And I'm going to hit save. So right now we've made our sheet, but there is nothing on it. So let's get into coding it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to specify the font face I am going to be using. So with font face, you're going to do an @font face. So I'm telling this is a selection I'm going to be using. This is what I'm going to be doing. All of your code for CSS, in order for it to be applied to a group, needs to be within the squiggly brackets. So what I like to do, and I highly recommend you do this, is I do my opening and I do my closing right away. And I can see open and close, and then I just make space between it so I don't forget to close it. So now I'm going to start telling it, okay, what are those attributes? What am I actually going to be working with? So I'm going to say font family. You remember in my folder, I have a font family that I'm working with, which is called Bromello. So I'm going to make my quotations. And I am going to Bromello. So I have that so far. Telling it that's a font family we're going to be working with. After every single property and value that you do, there has to be that semicolon before you move on to the next one. So that is what I'm doing. Now I need to tell it, okay, like where is it actually coming from? So I need a source. That source is the folder. You remember we made our little folder. And that is fonts bromello.ttf. And I'm going to put my little, so I'm going to save it. And I'm going to just go look at my page and just see what's happening. Nothing has happened. That is okay. Doesn't sometimes apply right away. That is fine. So I'm going to keep typing. I'm going to make sure that everything looks how it should, that I've spelled everything correctly. So now I'm going to start moving into my body. So that is where all of my text is. That is what I want my text to look like in all of my pages, which is a really big chunk. So with CSS, the cool thing is that you just call it. So I'm going to say body because I'm working with the body. I'm going to do my squiggly brackets, open and close right away. Then I'm going to start going in the middle. So one thing that I want for my body is to have a background image. You can see that they fill in a lot of things for you, which is great. So I need to tell it, okay, where is that image that I'm going to be using? So URL, and then I need to name my folder. So images. It's in that images folder, and it is called pattern.jpg. I'm going to close this. I'm going to do my brackets. Now I need to think about, okay, what else do I want? So I need to establish my background size. And it's not showing up, so I'll just type it. And I want it to be at 15%. And that is because I'm going to want this background size to repeat itself. Depending on what image you're working with, you can change things. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, completely up to you. I want it pretty small because I want it to be able to repeat it and see it. But just because I'm telling it that I want it at 15% doesn't automatically say that it is going to repeat. So I also have to say background repeat. And just say repeat. Whoops. That is what's going to make it repeat, okay? As you can see, coding with CSS is relatively easy as long as you know what you can call for, as long as you know what you can change. So you can change the background image, the size, the width, if it repeats or not, if it's going to float, if there's going to be a margin. You can change all of that, and all you do is just write it in. I'm going to do one more, and I'm going to try to run this and see if it works. Sometimes with CSS, you run into issues, and that is okay. It takes a lot of small little things. It could be a spacing. It could be one letter is off. It could be something that's missing. So we're going to do one more. We're going to try running it. And if it doesn't work, that's okay, because we also have the option of the code that I gave you. So I'm going to show you, okay, maybe mine doesn't work, but I have an option of a code that does work. How do I do that? The next one that I'm going to do is going to be wrap. So you can div ID sections of your website, and div ID means that you're just declaring that for that section, I want it to look different. And all you do in HTML is just say div ID equals, give it a name. So in order to change div IDs in CSS, you do your number and just say which div ID it is. So I'm going to change my wrap div ID so that that one section where I declared that it's going to look different, now I'm going to give it the code. So what is actually going to be different? So I'm going to say I want the width to be 800 pixels. I want my margin left to be auto. And I want my margin right to be auto. So I'm telling it, this is what I want, this is where I want it to go. I am going to save this, and we're going to go and try running this about me. So as you can see, it worked. I have my things here. I have my background repeating. Obviously, this is not perfect because I cannot see this clearly. So I still have a lot of work to do. I'm going to have to move my buttons. I'm going to have to move everything else. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you, okay, so you coded this with me to have a better understanding of how it works. And as you can see, fairly simple. All you have to do is just tell it what to do. Like, I want the width to be X number. I want the margin to be X number. I want my background to repeat or not to repeat. It's a very easy component. This takes a really long time though. So if it doesn't come out perfect the first time, that is okay. The only reason why this is going so smoothly for us is because we've had this code for a really long time and we've been able to perfect it. So I'm going to go back to Canvas to show you where you can get the CSS for your assignment so that you're not retyping everything. You can see right here it's a style.css. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to download it. And I am going to open it. So I'm going to show in folder. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say edit with Notepad++. So here I can see everything else that I would need to code. So my header, my navigation, which is very important. That's my buttons. Like, I have an image that I wanted to do. I have a width where I want it to float, how I want my padding to work, how I want my navigation list to look, how I want my buttons to look, how I want my content div ID to look, and lastly, my footer. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy all of this. I'm going to highlight all, say copy. I'm going to go to the one that I just coded, and I am going to say paste. So as you can see, it just replaced everything. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go back to my folder, click on that About Me page, and it should look like this. So you can see my fonts are working. Everything is where I want it to be. I have the images that are working. And I have my buttons where they are. I have a background to my content so that I can see it. So that is what was coded in the rest of this. And you can study it even more. Again, it's just words, like just telling it, this is my width, this is my padding, this is my color. So it doesn't mean that all of the pages look the same. I still have to copy that line of code that is linking my CSS to my HTML. So copy the code from the About Me page, and you're going to paste it right under the head in the interview, in the looking forward, and lastly, my leader. I'm going to save them. So now when I try to open any of them, if I just go to the About Me, it has it. If I click on my buttons, all of them look the same. So once you have it done for one page, it works for everybody else as long as you copy that link. So this is it for what you need to do for this assignment. So once you watch this video, walk through it with me, you wrote that first couple of code, and then you downloaded, copied, and pasted it, that is it. You're done. This is what I wanted you to learn to better understand how CSS coding works and how to link things together, file structure, and zipping and unzipping. So once you completely finish, make sure everything is saved. So all of the pages have the little floppy disk in blue. Everything is in your folder. Everything is in my folder. It looks good. You zip it and then turn it into Canvas. Okay? That is it for this lesson. If you have any questions whatsoever about any of this, feel free to send me an email and I'll be happy to help.